Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. So for a long period of time, we've been saying and asking the question, why isn't the Prime Minister speaking out? Why isn't he saying something on cow vigilantes and attacks on Dalits? Why isn't he speaking out about Kashmir for that matter? And suddenly in 1 week, Prime Minister has come out and done all of that. A very strong statement against cow vigilantes, an exceptionally strong statement in fact. He then spoke about the attacks on Dalits as well, and he came out and he spoke about Kashmir, and he spoke about the need to try and do something in Kashmir on the daira of insaniyat, of course that famous phrase used by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, somebody whom he specifically referred to. So what is all of this signaling? Is it a course correction? Is it something he should have done earlier? Or should we just say, look, he's done it at last, let's now figure out what this means and where we go forward. So joining us to help understand what this might be signaling for the path ahead for this particular government, Sambit Patra is joining us, spokesperson of the BJP. We have Mr. Hariom Tayal, who's from the Akhil Bharatiya Jan Seva Sansthan, who's the chairman of the Gaushala Sangh of Haryana. It's great to have you with us. Doesn't completely agree with everything that the Prime Minister said. Aarti Jairat's with us, a senior journalist. Shiv Shakti Bakshi, former president of the JNU AB VP, executive editor of Kamal Sandesh. It's great to have you with us. Kamal Mitra Chinoy, well-known human rights activist, is with us as well. Mehul Jain, social media activist, has quite often been fighting the battles and the wars out there on behalf of Mr. Modi and others, and some of us have probably been prominent targets of yours, so that's okay. That's the way life is. And Professor Kancha Elaya joining us from Hyderabad, one of the country's best-known Dalit Bahujan intellectuals. Thank you all so much for being with us. We're going to get Mani Shankar Iyer in a short while from now. Sambit keeps threatening that he has to leave us early, so we'll try and get Mani in your place. I'm not sure he's going to tow your line necessarily, Sambit, but he will certainly be here. Let me start off with you, actually. Are we seeing a change in direction? Has the Prime Minister realized that, he should actually be speaking? And it's interesting that this Prime Minister has to be told to speak, because we attacked the previous one so much for being silent all the time. If there's one thing that Narendra Modi is renowned for, it's his ability to speak and to convince people and to articulate himself. So it's great that he's talking out on some of these issues now.
As far as the Prime Minister and speeches are concerned, one has to remember one thing absolutely correctly, that the Prime Minister has to speak at the right time, in the sense that he has to gather all the information, and whatever he speaks is the final authority. So naturally, expecting Prime Minister to speak on every issue right on the same day, I think is expecting too much. The Prime Minister has spoken.
This has been building for a while. The actions of the cow vigilantes have been on for a period of time, and the attacks on Dalits as well. And there is a certain political damage that has already been done, you could argue, to the BJP, both in Gujarat and in Uttar Pradesh. The Dalit movements that you are now seeing happening, there's a political price that the BJP is paying. And by the way, was that the reason why he spoke out now? Because he realized there's a political price?
No. As far as issues of Dalits are concerned, as far as the issues of Kashmir are concerned, the Prime Minister has spoken umpteen number of times. It's not that he had spoken for the first time. In Kashmir issue also, remember that as far as the three words, the words that we have taken from Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat and Jamhuriyat is concerned, the Prime Minister had quoted these words previously as well. The irony is, Dalit, it's not Dalit, it is Dalhit. In Hindi, Dalhit meaning political benefits, That's the problem which we all have to understand. Those political parties which are trying to gain some political brownie points because there are atrocities against the Dalits in the very state which even they were ruling, in which they are ruling presently, are trying to make out as if the atrocities have started only 2 years from now. And this is where we beg to differ, and this is where we say that, well, Manmohan Singh never spoke against Gohana, never spoke against Mirchpur, neither that same section demanded the Prime Minister to speak. If the Prime Minister, just 10 seconds. The
country by and large spent 10 years saying, why isn't the Prime Minister speaking? It's not that we didn't.
Everyone knows in the federal structure that law and order is a state scenario. So when we have a law and order situation in a state, it is for the state to deal with. And that is what the Prime Minister firmly reiterated, that, well, yes, you cannot take these atrocities sitting lightly. You have to see to it that dossiers are prepared against the people who attack the Dalits. And please, for God's sake, start acting. This the states knew already.
So, Hariom Tayalji, let me ask you the question. What the Prime Minister said, he spoke out very strongly against the cow vigilantes. He said some people have opened shops in the name of cow protection. Strong remarks out here. How do you respond to them?
We are responsible only when there is any such thing, the butcher taking the cows and people gather there. There are not only Gorakshaks.
उनका तो साफ कहना है कि 80% लोग हैं जो ये सब कर रहे हैं.
No, it's not correct, you know. And it's very shocking also. Because all the Gorakshaks, how they plan their duties, you know, they all day and night they go and see that if there is any such thing, cows are going and somebody are taking them out.
From certain sections, Vishwa Hindu Parishad and others, there has been criticism of the Prime Minister. Some of the Sant Sadhus and others have said that maybe he went too far. Maybe he should have said there are good people who are doing cow protection, but some people are taking it too far. How do you take the comment that he made?
Actually, if you can see how the Prime Minister has spoken on the entire issue, actually he has linked Gauraksha with Goseva. He is actually talking about the kind of people who are doing hooliganism in the name of cow protection. So, that kind of elements, anti-social elements, he has specifically made it that the anti-social elements, they should not be encouraged and proper action should be taken against them.
The Constitution does not say preserve only the cow. It says in Article 48, preserve all milch and draft cattle, which includes the buffalo, which gets no protection. And the preservation is to improve the breed. Where are they improving the breed?
Okay.
Where are they making cows healthier and better bred?
I don't want to make this only specifically about the cow because I think there's a political aspect that I want to get to. So let me just come to you. The political implication of what the Prime Minister has said right now. Now you've had, let me just give you some of the reactions from within the broader Sangh Parivar. So the RSS came out and very strongly backed Narendra Modi. Some antisocial elements of society have been taking the law into their hands in the name of Gauraksha and trying to disrupt harmony by acts of violence. It can make the sacred task of Gauraksha and Gau Seva look suspect. This is what the RSS said, Bhaiyaji Joshi. And he clearly said we would urge state governments to take legal action against such elements. Do not let the true act of Gauraksha and Gau Seva be disrupted. So, very clear statement from the RSS saying that preserve the cow, look after the cow, book the vigilantes, throw them into jail. What the Prime Minister said. Vishwa Hindu Parishad, though, said something very different. Prime Minister has hurt the sentiments of Gau Rakshaks and he will have to pay for it in the next Lok Sabha polls. Our Gau Rakshaks are sacrificing their lives to save cows and Modi ji has termed them as criminals who run shops. This is not fair and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad condemns this statement. Hindu Mahasabha, of course, went one step further and said that the Prime Minister is an Asteen ka Saap. He has lured people in the name of cow protection to get votes. He's actually turned out to be an Asteen ka Saap, is what Pooja Shakun Pandey of the Akhil Bharatiya Hindu Mahasabha said. Logically, it's a very correct thing that the Prime Minister has done because at the end of the day, the right wing or the cow vigilantes, well, in any case, we voted for the BJP, whom else are they going to vote for? So there's a certain
They may
merit.
stay at home, Vikram.
They are unlikely to sit at home.
But I think...
Do you really see Sunil Parashar, the Vice President, Braj region of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, saying, oh, because the Prime Minister said this, I'm going to go and vote for the Bahujan Samaj Party or the Samajwadi Party or the Congress Party?
The dissonance that you're seeing today in the Parivar with these different and conflicting statements probably explains why the Prime Minister has been silent for so long. As you pointed out, this incidents of cow vigilantism have been going on for a long time and in fact probably started last year with the Dadri incident when the Prime Minister did not speak.
This may be the reason, but I think what I'm trying to understand is that politically, doesn't it make perfect sense for the Prime Minister to do what he's done? Because
no, of course.
Many people have been wondering why he didn't do it earlier.
No,
because
absolutely.
You stand to lose a lot more votes by having the Dalits and others saying that the BJP doesn't represent us. Then risk upsetting Mr. Sunil Parashar. I mean, at the end of the day, Sunil Parashar will probably still vote for the BJP.
And he should have spoken out much earlier. And he's clearly spoken out now because it's pinching him in Gujarat, Vikram. That's where it's really hurting the Prime
Gujarat
Minister.
And Uttar Pradesh. I'm going to come to Kancha Laya on that.
And the impact in Uttar Pradesh, both of which go to polls next year.
Politically, does the BJP think that, well, this is the right thing that he did?
day one when the Prime Minister enters the Parliament, he bows down to the Parliament saying that this is the biggest democracy, mandir of democracy. The next day he says, rather the very first day he says, that in fact the most holy book of this country is the Constitution of this country. So naturally the Constitution prescribes, as told by my friend Mr. Mitra, that Article 48, Directive Principle, says that the cow has to be protected. The same Constitution gives right to life of the human beings as well. So naturally that is what the Prime Minister said. Let's not play this game of statistics, how many percentage, what percentage, but what he meant to say, what he has driven home is, yes, Gau Seva is good. See to it that the cows do not die on the street eating plastics, but for God's sake, you cannot start taking the law in your hand, beating people, going into the kind of vigilantism which is not warranted.
What the government is doing for cows, let us understand this.
No, but I'm saying, I think what he is saying, what the Prime Minister is saying is protect the cow by all means, and we can have an open-ended debate on how to do that. Don't beat up human beings in the name of protecting the cow, I think is the point of the Prime Minister.
And I think he would also agree to it.
How many cases are there?
One case is one case too many. Look what we saw on
Enough to hurt the BJP politically, I think.
One of the other things that has to be said is, it is sometimes felt that this particular government is a bit extra cautious about its own core constituency. And that could be the likes of Sunil Parashar and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and others. It could also be your constituency in forums like Twitter, right? And I'm going to get him in on this, where quite often a lot of extra concern is given as to what Twitter trolls and Twitter mobs and, you know, all of these people are going to be saying. And you sometimes see the government actually doing it and being concerned as to what a certain section is going to say. Is that playing a very important role in government's decision making?
Look, as far as social media is concerned, no doubt social media is extremely important. Every person in the social media or otherwise is important. But having said that, nothing is more important than the constitution of this country. If a section says that, well, we have to beat the people, no one is going to agree with that. The government does not stand with it. The government wants the constitution to be upheld. As far as political correctness is concerned, that we were being heard politically, as Aarti points out, let me just tell you, it's not for the first time that atrocities have appeared against Dalits. I can quote you umpteen number of cases. While we are debating this last 7 days, we had a case where 2 youths were urinated upon in Bihar and they belong to the Dalit community. Only yesterday in UP Sahajanpur, we had seen as to how a Dalit was beaten to death because he was trying to buy a costly watch. We had seen as to how in Kanpur a Dalit died in the confines of a police station. But those were not discussed. Now we have to understand the core issue. The core issue is there is a section out there, I'm not taking names, there is a section out there which is trying its best politically again after 2014 defeat to gather the Dalits and the Muslim together so that they are politically benefited, and that is the reason as to why they have a tunneled and a selective vision. They do not see atrocities in the states which are ruled by Congress. They do not talk about atrocities that took place in the previous years, but very conveniently they only pick up the issues pertaining to Bharatiya Janata Party.
Kanchai Laya, the fact that the Prime Minister has come out and spoken now, he's saying, Sambit is saying it's partly selective tunnel vision. People only talk about it when it happens with the BJP, which is why the Prime Minister perhaps had to come out and make those statements as often. And actually his statements on the attacks on Dalits were also very, very strong statements that he made, where he said, I would like to tell these people, if you have any problems, if you have to attack me. Stop attacking my Dalit brethren. Are those sort of comments you think going to go a long way in easing the anger that sections of the Dalits have been facing? Or do you think, as Sambit says, in any case that you know the anger was misplaced at being aimed at the BJP?
The gravity of the situation gets reflected in his own statement when he said, if you want to kill me, but not my Dalit brothers. That's what he said. Now, unless there is a huge problem at the ground level in different locations, the Prime Minister of a country would not have talked about killing him, not the Dalit brothers. Now, there is a very positive language there. He was saying that Dalit brothers are my brothers like anybody else, so therefore you don't kill. But the question is, I think whether Sambit or BJP as a party or some of the Sangh Parivar organizations which are today taking one stand which took another stand earlier which is different from Hindu Mahasabha and some of the other Gorakshan organizations, is that the reference to Constitution of Article 48 in the directive principles is as if it is only meant for cow and its progeny, not for the rest of the issues in the directive principles is the problem. Now in this what happened? In this what happened is this, that instead of taking care of go portion, they made rigorous laws about Gau Rakshan. What Sambitji is saying is right. There are umpteen kinds of atrocities on Dalits from the days of Manu to present. But this is a government-made issue right now.
I'm just going to come back to you, Kancha. Manishankar Iyer, Sambit is saying that what the Prime Minister said was the correct thing to say, and he chose his right time to say it, whether it comes to the attacks on the Dalits or on the attacks on cow vigilantes. And he's also wondering why the opposition is playing so much politics on the entire question of attacks on Dalits. He says this happens everywhere.
I'm glad the Prime Minister has at long, very long last, come out with saying what any Prime Minister should have said as soon as these incidents started. That is the point, that this vigilantism is not as a result of a desire to protect the cow, because the desire to protect the cow is part of the Congress heritage as enunciated by Mahatma Gandhi for years before we reached this point.
But specifically, do you think this has got to do a lot with the Dalit backlash that we have seen in Gujarat and in Uttar Pradesh?
Well, the Dalit backlash is the consequence of the Sangh Parivar's aggression. It is the Sangh Parivar's aggression on this issue, and that arises from the fundamental mindset of the Sangh Parivar. I want to share with you what Mahatma Gandhi said on this issue in the middle of the partition process on the 25th of July 1947, as reported in D.G. Tendulkar's book. Gandhiji said the Hindu religion prohibited cow slaughter for the Hindus, not for the world. The religious prohibition came from within. Any imposition from without meant compulsion. Such compulsion was repugnant to religion. India was the land not only of the Hindus, but also of the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Parsis, the Christians and the Jews. And he could have added and the Dalits, and all who claimed to be of India and were loyal to the Indian Union. Now in these circumstances, to make the issue of the cow the litmus test of loyalty, and to tell people who have a different view of the cow that they can go to Pakistan, and then to attack people whose livelihood depends upon the leather industry, I think all this would have happened in 1947 if this Hindutva view had prevailed then. All this is happening now because of the Hindutva view, and when the Prime Minister makes a statement finally, it's exactly, Vikram, please let me finish my sentence. It's exactly like in keeping with a Tamil phrase, a popular saying, which is perhaps there in other languages, that you pinch the baby to make it cry, and then you rock the cradle to show that you're comforting the baby.
First you pinch the baby, and then you're rocking the cradle.
Let me tell you who pinched the baby and who is rocking the cradle. In fact, when Mr. Manishankar Iyer says that it's a fundamental mindset of the RSS and the Sangh Parivar, which is responsible for the atrocities against the Dalits, 1925 was the year when RSS was formed. Is it that the Dalit atrocities never existed before 1925, and all of these started with 1925 and surged when Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister? Not at all. Gohana and Mirchpur, just Google Gohana and Mirchpur, you would find that the worst atrocities against the Dalits, where hundreds of homes of Dalits were burnt, were during the tenure of the Congress regime. Second
He's talking about Mahatma Gandhi, you're talking about 1925. I'm trying to figure out.
Now, the pinching of the baby. B.R. Ambedkar is the dawn of Dalit thinking. He is a think tank of Dalit wellness. He, in his resignation letter submitted to Nehru, classically quotes as one of the points as to why he's quitting the government. He states that this government, that is Nehru's government, is being indifferent towards Dalits' welfare.
Who has pinched the baby and who's rocking it? That's what you promised
I'm
to tell
telling
me.
you. I ask you a question, Bikram, directly. I asked Mr. Manishankar Iyer, 125 houses of Dalit in Bihar were gutted. Where were you then? Where was Mr. Manishankar Iyer then? You talk about Gujarat, but in Bihar, Dalits are not Dalits. You talk about Gujarat, but in Kerala, when a girl called Jisa is murdered, brutally murdered, a Dalit girl, no one
all
talks
of
about
the-
that.
okay,
Where is the book of Mr. Manishankar Iyer then? Why he does not remember Pakistan then when
fine.
Jisa is murdered? This convenient talking just because you want a Dalit Muslim vote bank. People of this country are intelligent.
Do
They
you
can
want-
see
you looking
through
for a
it.
Dalit
And people
Muslim
are not
vote
going to
bank?
fall into this trap.